You can work hard, stay disciplined, make smart choices, and still feel like your whole life is just you pushing a boulder up a steep hill. And the confusing part, you're just doing what you were taught. Use more effort, more control, better planning. But the harder you try to force your plan onto reality, the more resistance you create. Lao Tzu saw this centuries ago. He pointed to a different way of working with reality, the idea of yielding instead of forcing, not in a passive way, not carelessly, but aligned with how things are actually working. Flow isn't about doing less, it's about dissolving the inner habit that turns every moment into a fight. Once you see what is really creating resistance in your life, you can stop feeding it. And when resistance drops, life starts moving through you instead of against you. If this resonates with you, I put together a short guide in the top comment below. Check it out. Most people blame circumstances, bad timing, difficult people, uncertainty. But the root of resistance is simpler than that. It's what happens when you argue with reality. Lao Tzu saw this clearly. He said, "Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Let things flow naturally." But here's what often happens. The instant something shifts, the instant life doesn't match the picture in your head, your body tenses up, your jaw clenches, your shoulders rise toward your ears, your breath gets shallow and tight in your chest. And then this voice in your head starts arguing. This shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. This is wrong. That internal argument is resistance. You're not actually changing what's happening, you're just making yourself miserable while it happens. And there's another layer to this. This voice labels everything. Good, bad, success, failure, safe, dangerous. It judges your choices. It replays conversations. It rehearses arguments with people who aren't even in the room. This voice builds a fixed mental image. I'm a manager. I'm successful. Or I'm a failure. And then spends all its energy defending that image while life keeps moving. Once you lock onto that mental image, 3 patterns show up. First, you confuse the label for your actual self. You don't just do a job, you become it. You don't just feel an emotion, you become it. So when life shifts, it doesn't just change your situation, it feels like it's threatening who you are. Second, you demand certainty before you move. You want guarantees. But life doesn't offer guarantees. It offers a direction, a flow. When you refuse to move without certainty, you stall your own momentum and call it being careful. Third, you turn change into a personal attack. When a job ends, when a relationship concludes, when a chapter closes, you don't see natural transition, you see failure. You tell yourself it happened because you weren't good enough. You turn everything that happens into a story about your worth. So how do you break free from these patterns? Lao Tzu offers a teaching that cuts through all of this. Picture a river. People are clinging to the bank, terrified of what happens if they let go. They hold onto the rocks, the roots, anything solid, and they call that control. And here's what they don't realize. The river is your life and it's already moving. holding onto the bank doesn't stop the current. Your arms just get tired. The water pulls at you anyway. What you call control is just exhaustion. The moment you let go, something shifts. You're not drowning, you're floating. The river carries you. And once you stop fighting the current, you can actually see where you're going. You have the clarity to notice what's happening. You have the energy to move toward what matters instead of just holding on to what's already gone. This is what Lao Tzu means by letting things be as they are. You stop arguing with the present moment. You see what's actually happening first. Then you decide what to do about it. And here's how you know the difference between forcing and allowing. You can feel it in your body. When you're arguing with what's happening, your breath gets shallow and tight. Your shoulders rise. Your jaw clenches. Your mind fills with thoughts, planning, defending, rehearsing arguments with people who aren't even in the room. That tension is you fighting what's actually here. When you stop arguing and just see what's true, you can actually breathe again. Your shoulders drop. Your mind stops racing. There is space to think clearly. And in that space, you can respond instead of reacting. Forcing creates tension and noise. Allowing creates space and clarity. And it's in that clarity that you can see what to do next. But here's where most people get caught again. Once you stop fighting the present, you start rushing the future. Lao Tzu says, by letting it go, it all gets done. When you try and try, the world is beyond the winning. This sounds like a riddle until you feel it in your own life. Letting go doesn't mean passivity. It means action without strain. It's the difference between swimming with the current and thrashing against it. Most people hear let go and think it means giving up. But that's not what Lao Tzu is pointing to. He's pointing to the trap of winning. The need to dominate outcomes, to force life into the shape you decided it should take. When you chase outcomes as a substitute for inner alignment, three things happen. First, you stop measuring your worth through results. You tell yourself you're only valuable if the project succeeds, if the relationship works, if people approve. So every outcome becomes a referendum on whether you deserve to exist. That's pretty brutal. Second, you create the fantasy that effort can replace natural timing. You want the harvest now. You want clarity before the lesson. You want the relationship to feel secure before you've learned how to be there for your partner. You want the calling to pay off even before you've learned how to serve it. But nature doesn't work that way. A seed doesn't become a tree because you yell at it. It becomes a tree because the conditions align and the process unfolds. Your job isn't to fold the seed into a tree. Your job is to water the seed and trust the intelligence already moving through it. Third, you try to dominate timing. You demand that the door opens now, that the answer arrives today, that life moves on your schedule. And when it doesn't, you interpret the delay as a rejection. But the Tao doesn't follow your timeline. It follows its own rhythm. And that rhythm is wiser than your urgency. Lao Tzu offers another teaching that dissolves this trap. Do the difficult things while they're easy. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. This isn't motivational advice. It's spiritual instruction about alignment. When you handle problems early, you're not fighting a crisis. You're making a gentle correction. The boat drifts slightly off course, so you adjust the rudder. Simple, clean, no drama. But if you ignore the drift, the boat ends up miles away. Now you need a dramatic reset, massive effort, stress, emergency energy. And you call that working hard. Lao Tzu is saying, stop creating emergencies by ignoring what's easy to handle. Small steps work because they're about alignment, not force. Each step either moves with the Tao or against it, and you can easily feel the difference. When a step is aligned, it feels simple. There is no internal argument. Your body doesn't fight it. Your mind doesn't spiral into doubt. You just move. When a step is forced, you feel the friction immediately. Your breath gets shallow, your mind spirals, replaying the same doubts, rehearsing the same arguments. You're trying to convince yourself this is the right move. That friction is your feedback. It's not a sign you're weak, it's a sign you're out of sync with the current. Natural timing is spiritual intelligence. It's recognizing when a door is open versus when you're pushing a wall. And this recognition requires stillness. Not the stillness of doing nothing, but the stillness of inner listening. Most people can't feel the difference between an open door and a wall because their minds are too loud. They're so busy planning, strategizing, and rehearsing outcomes that they miss the quiet signal the Tao is already sending. Here's the inner instruction Lao Tzu offers. Do what's yours to do, then loosen your grip. You plant the seed, you water it, you give it sunlight. Then you let the earth do its work. You don't dig up the seed every day to check if it's growing. You trust the process. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop strangling outcomes with your need for control. When you release your tight hold on how things should unfold, something surprising happens. The outcome arrives faster and cleaner than if you'd forced it. Not because the universe rewards surrender, but because you're no longer creating resistance. The river moves, you stop holding onto the rocks, and suddenly you're covering ground you couldn't reach through the effort alone. This is the art of not rushing. It's not about slowing down, it's about moving at the speed of the Tao, instead the speed of your anxiety. Lao Tzu says, to the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders. Stillness isn't the absence of activity, it's the end of inner commentary. It's the end of you getting in your own way. Most people think stillness means sitting on a cushion with your eyes closed, and that can be one doorway. But Lao Tzu is pointing to something deeper, a quality of presence that can exist in the middle of motion. Think about the last time you worked on something you genuinely love, something that lights you up from the inside. Maybe it's creating something, maybe it's solving a problem, maybe it's being with someone who sees you. In those moments, time changes. You look up and hours have passed, but it feels like minutes. You're not tired, you're energized. The usual hunger for validation fades. The work itself becomes the altar. This is flow, and flow is what happens when the ego stops managing your experience. When you're in flow, there is no separation between you and what you're doing. The doing happens through you. You're not forcing ideas, you're receiving them. You're not performing, you're expressing. Lao Tzu connects this to a deeper teaching. The key to growth is the introduction of higher dimension of consciousness into our awareness. Growth isn't about adding more effort. It's about expanding awareness. When your awareness expands, you start noticing guidance that was always there, but drowned out by the noise of your thinking. A higher consciousness doesn't shout, it whispers. It's subtle, simple, direct. And it only speaks when the mind is still enough to hear it. This is why flow feels sacred. It's not just peak performance, it's a doorway into your true nature. The part of you that exists before labels, before roles, before the stories you tell about who you are. So, how do you actually go about living this way? You choose the direction that feels real, not the one that looks impressive. You notice what drains you instantly and treat that as a feedback from the tone. You let life simplify itself through honest alignment. Flow isn't something you achieve, it's something you allow. And the allowing begins the moment you stop arguing with reality. Flow returns the moment you start arguing with what is, inside you and around you. Resistance causes sorrow because it turns the present moment into an enemy. Allowing doesn't mean you approve of everything. It means you let reality be reality first, and then you act from that clear seeing. Flow is what happens when you stop controlling the process and instead allow your true awareness to take over.